Wow, what a pleasure. This is the beginning of something truly special. Jeannie Basso is on this call right now, and she always starts out that, guys, you have no idea, this is the beginning of something amazing. And I truly believe that. Super good day to everyone we have on this call, and especially those who will be listening to the call. There were many of you that said that you want the recording, and we'll get you the recording, and it's an honor to be able to do that. On behalf of Denny St. Pierre and myself today, we are here to properly introduce a non-invasive medical device that has already accumulated over 5 million treatments. For me, guys and gals, this is personal. I used this device for 2 treatments about 14 days ago. And I have an annoying neuropathy, a chronic pain that is just, it drives me crazy. My neuropathy went away for 9 days. It's about 30%, 20% back after 9 days, and I'm waiting for my unit so I can start having a regiment of being on the Avacen every single day, having that microcirculation so I can get rid of this chronic pain of neuropathy. So for me, it's a testimony that means the world, and that is something truly special, and you're going to hear all about it right now. I'm going to introduce my business partner, Denny St. Pierre, and he's going to introduce the host of this call. So thank you. Enjoy. Have a pad and a pen. Write down a lot because you're going to get a lot of information today. Denny, why don't you take it over?
Thanks, Brett. It's a pleasure. And as I said, a lot of the brain cells are definitely well received here in Canada with all the oxygen we breathe in, but we still need circulation. And what a great honor today to be in front of this. And my big thing about New Life Ventures is the timing and the exclusivity of this amazing product. So I don't want to take much of this thunder. And my job is certainly, and I feel really amazed and honored to have connected with this gentleman called Michael Ladd. Traditionally has owned a medical supply business, wholesale business. Mainly his focus has been in North America to practitioners, to small clinics, a true professional in the industry of traditional business. And I'm certainly very pleased, Brett and I are very pleased to have direct connection with him. And he's such an incredible leader. You could feel his spirit is always well given. Anyhow, so Michael, are you with us?
Yes, I am. Do you hear me?
All right. Yes, I am. And I can see you're so busy that your phone must be ringing, but I give you the...
Actually, that was not me, but I've got my video off, or on rather, but apparently I'm not coming through for some reason, Denny.
Okay. Okay, is this, there we go.
Okay, does that do it?
That.
Okay, just a sec, then how about there?
Yeah, no? you're on now, Michael.
I'm on, okay,
go
very
ahead.
good.
There we go.
Well, hey, listen, thank you very much for that kind introduction. And you and Brett are just absolutely stellar guys. I cannot commend you enough. It's just such a pleasure to work with you guys. And my guess is that there's several people on this call that I have spoken with, or maybe even perhaps met in person. I can tell you those that I haven't, I already know the caliber of people that they are, because between you guys, the Rolodex that you have is extraordinary. The caliber of people are just stupendous. So I welcome everybody. Thanks so much for taking the time out. I do want to just say too that this is going to be a 2-part presentation. We're going to have Tom Muehlbauer come on in just a couple of moments and give the history of the product, his background, and the whole evolution of where we are today. And then we'll take a very brief, maybe 20, 30 seconds. And as soon as Tom has completed his portion, and then we're going to bring on the co-master distributors, Jeannie Basso and Mita Del Fiero, to cover the marketing opportunity for this. And I think once everybody gets a real handle on what we have, as far as this device, you're going to be excited to understand how you can play a role in spreading the word. So that being said, and incidentally, at the end, we may be able to take a few questions if Tom has time. We may be able to take a few questions at the end of the comp plan presentation as well. So in the chat, just type in any questions that you may have, and we'll try to address those. And if we can't live, then we'll get back to everybody with a response as best we can. So Denny, as you know, I've told you the story. Marta and I were in California in January and February. We were down there on some business and some vacation. We have had a lot of exposure in the past to different medical devices and being somewhat from the medical field ourselves. We were familiar with microcirculations. We knew the importance of blood flow and everything that entails. And so Jeannie Basso, we were making arrangements to have dinner with her, and she shared with us the story about this device that she had recently discovered. And she absolutely had our attention, so much so that the very next morning, 10:30 in the morning, we were meeting with the gentleman you're about to meet and his lovely wife, Danielle. And Jeannie had our attention. Tom and Danielle got our commitment. They got our conviction. It was extraordinary what we heard, and you're about to get a feel for that yourselves. I think really what Tom did was probably, he would say, maybe a labor of love. He was trying to help a family member. And then this has evolved into what we have today. Is extraordinary. So what I'd like to do now then is bring on Thomas Muehlbauer. Tom is the CEO and founder of Avacen Medical, and he is the developer of the products that we have to take to the marketplace. And Tom, it's my great pleasure. Come on, sir.
Thank you, Michael. Can everybody hear me? Can you hear me all right? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Hear you, Tom.
It doesn't always work that way. Well, thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to tell you about our 10-year overnight success. And started out exactly 10 years ago in 2009. Actually, let's step back to 2008. 2008, I was working with the scientists at Stanford University, the chair of biology, and one of the senior researchers on a product that would rapidly cool the human body. So I was studying thermal regulation, and the purpose of the product was to allow people to do more work, specifically athletes, the Stanford football team, for one of the reasons that the device was being. And at the same time, I had a company called Point-to-Point Software, which I started in 2007. And Point-to-Point Software was studying the migraine triggers and the neural reactions in the brain using functional MRI. And the reason I was doing that is I was trying to help my sister-in-law, who for 20 years, almost 25, had migraines on the order of 15 to 20 times a month, serious migraines. So she had chronic migraines. And so I was studying migraines. I formed a company to gather empirical data on reactions from trigger points. Even today, scientists still don't know what causes migraines, but they do know there's over 100 different trigger points. So that's what I was doing in 2008. I came across some research from a doctor in Florida that was treating thyroid patients with T3 hormones to increase their core body temperature. Now, I immediately recognized that my sister-in-law always had low core body temperature. Her hands were always cold. She even wore gloves sometimes in the summer. So I said, aha, why is he doing that? And the thing that came out of his research was that migraineurs that were in the thyroid study were getting relief from migraines. And so I put two and two together to be real simple about the situation. And I said, well, if we can lower the core body temperature, there must be a way to raise the core body temperature rapidly and safely. And I was told that everybody knows that you use cooling for migraines, you don't use heat. And the reason they were getting results was when they brought the body back to normal thermia, the low body temperature. This is the people in Florida. their hypothesis was that the hormones and the enzymes would work like they were supposed to work, and that's why they were helping people with migraines. Anyway, that's how I started on the journey. In January of 2009, I had my first device, which contained an igloo cooler to hold 160-degree water, a metal cylinder that you placed your hand around, and what looked like a fish bowl that you put your hand in, and we created a vacuum in that. It was the 24th of, actually 29th, the 29th of January 2009. So I tried this on my sister-in-law. Up until that point, her husband, who's a very famous MD in San Diego, would only allow Western medicine treatments. And so because I stretched the truth and told him that it was for the Stanford device, he allowed me to use it on her. And the results were amazing. I didn't have a protocol, so I basically overcooked her, but then I found out it was safe. And so when I first saw her, she looked very gray. I'd never seen her while she had a migraine. She kept to herself in her room because the light bothered her. So at about 7 minutes, her gray face started turning pink. And I got very excited, and I asked her how she was feeling. She still had her migraine. She said she still had her migraine, but she had an appetite. So that started the process of trying to find what the proper protocol is. So I continued to use the device on her. We stopped at 15 minutes. Later on, I found out that we could have stopped at 10 minutes. But I was doing something I was told I couldn't do. So it was a major discovery, and that was non-invasively infusing heat into the circulatory system above normothermia. So normothermia is 37 degrees in Canada Celsius, or 98.6 here in the United States in Fahrenheit. That's where the body normally should be. And it's called normal, not normal, but normothermia. And to do that, and my discovery came about just because like I say, I overcooked her. I didn't have a protocol, and I kept putting heat in when I probably didn't need to. But the question, I get a couple of questions all the time. My background is I'm a person that since I was 5 years old, I was always able to find solutions for problems. And the problem that I faced here was treating a migraine. And so how did I do that when I'm basically a computer engineer? That's what I've been all my life, and most of my life anyway. I did some other stuff. I retired a couple times, and actually this brought me back out of retirement to do this. But the reason that I discovered this, and nobody discovered it in 400 years of Western medicine, is the fact that there's no reason to do what I did. If you think about it, heating the body had one purpose and one purpose only, and that's to treat somebody who is hypothermic. So somebody that fell through the ice, somebody that fell into the ocean and at 60-degree temperature and stayed in there for a long time. Somebody that fell down on their floor and spent the night on the floor, and they were older and they didn't have good circulation. Most prevalently would be the effects of anesthesia after surgery. The patients, typically you try to keep them from becoming hypothermic, but they do. So hypothermia in an emergency situation is below 95 degrees Fahrenheit, or 36 degrees, no, actually it's 35 degrees Celsius. So when somebody became hypothermic, the boundaries of normothermia stop at, now I'll just talk Fahrenheit. The boundaries at normothermia beginning is 96.8, not 98.6, 96.8. So if they had somebody that was 95 degrees or less, they would warm them, and this is how hospital discharge works after surgery too, to get out of the recovery room. When your core body temperature is back to 96.8, you're released. And that also means job done. There's no reason to continue to heat somebody, and probably no reason anybody could ever think about to heat somebody. Now, about 10 years ago, they started inducing hyperthermia, bringing the temperature, or taking the human body and bringing the temperature above 105 degrees Fahrenheit to treat cancer. But that has a specific purpose, and that's not what I do. So It was a true discovery. As a matter of fact, I ended up patenting it. We've got 13 patents, 4 U.S. patents, and actually one application from February of last year that's going through the patent process. And those are published and they're available to look at. The interesting thing about our new published patent is it's for having the ability to determine future cardiac events 4 years in advance. So it's if you have a chance to read it, it's pretty interesting. Anyway, so through the years, well, first of all, I thought I had a migraine device. There was 30 million people in the United States. Coincidentally, $30 billion was lost in productivity in the United States for migraines. That had to do with people just not coming to work, people performing poorly, people making mistakes while they had migraines and not focusing. So a huge market presented itself, and being an entrepreneur, I decided that I would continue to develop the device, and at the same time I'd get FDA clearance for treating migraines. That was much easier to say than to get done. As a matter of fact, what the FDA asked for was a multi-site clinical trial with over 100 patients. And by the time we got done with it, it would have taken us 4 years, and it would have taken us over $5 million, which I didn't have. The money for the company has been raised primarily through friends and family initially, and then the last 75% has come from customers, believe it or not, doctors, clinics that said, "Hey, this is amazing. Can we help you finance the company because we want a better product?" If you would have seen the original product, and I think Michael, I don't know if we brought it out for you when you were there, but it looks it's very antiquated. What you have today is a really polished product that has had over 2,000 devices in field testing, and it's a very robust device. It's a device that has over 4,000 firmware instructions, which means it has its own operating system actually. And so it takes a very complicated process, and that's infusing heat non-invasively into the human body, and we turn it into a one-button push situation. So it's very easy, and that's what allowed us to get over-the-counter clearance by the FDA in the United States, because it is a very safe and a very easy-to-use device. And that took a while to get, by the way. So once I determined that we didn't have the money for the migraine device, we just decided to sell a device without any indications and go towards FDA clearance for things that they would allow us to do. And that took a number of years. We got our FDA clearance, I think, in 2014. So it's 5 years ago. So 5 years it took us to get that. And then after that, we are cleared for a number of situations, but mostly pain and aches and pains. Muscular, a big one we're cleared for is muscular relaxation, which is a huge waterfall for all kinds of situations. And then for pain related to arthritis. And so that's what we're cleared for by the FDA in the United States. So going back to, well, first of all, Avacen, I don't know if you know this, it's an acronym, and it stands for Advanced Vascular Circulation Enhancement. So let's see, I got to 2009, where we got our money from. We've got 13 patents. We're FDA cleared, CE marked. We have an ISO 13485 manufacturing facility. Actually, 1345 2016. That's a good manufacturing program that we adhere to, and we assemble everything in San Diego. We also qualify as a NAFTA point of origin for shipping to Canada and Mexico. Let's see. The company's profitable. Let's see. So really in 2016 is when we started marketing the device. in that was in April, and our initial marketing of the device was over the internet. And we found it to be not the easiest to sell a multi-$1,000 device, because you really need a story, and you really need to be able to talk to the person and ask questions. So it's a perfect direct sales product. And so our big study, which took place in 2013, was with the University of San Diego, California, and the Department of Veterans Affairs on fibromyalgia. And that's a published study, it's peer-reviewed. And the reason that we picked fibromyalgia actually was picked by the U.S. Department of Veteran Services. It is because they wanted some way to treat people with fibromyalgia back in 2013 that was not drug related. And so, and we wanted a painful situation that, number one, nobody was addressing with a medical device, and number two, it was systemic, which means that fibromyalgia affects the entire body. And so it was a great challenge for us. The results of that study were that we showed in a period of 4 weeks using the device twice a day. And we had a control group that used it once a day for 10 minutes, and the actual dosage that we were testing was twice a day for 15 minutes a time. And over the control group actually did pretty well, but nothing like our full dosage. And we were able to achieve a 40.5% decrease in the widespread pain associated with fibromyalgia in 4 weeks. And to compare that with the pharmaceuticals that generate about $7 billion a year in sales, in their 13-week studies, they weren't even able to touch a 2% reduction in widespread pain. So we opened a lot of eyes, and actually we had a lot of people that wanted to invest in the company at that time, which helped us over the next couple of years. As for other clinical studies, we did a clinical study with San Diego State University here in San Diego, and that was on hypertension. It was on the ability to lower mean arterial pressure, and we were able to lower in a 20-minute treatment with just six individuals, but it was enough to be scientifically or statistically valid. We were able to reduce the mean arterial pressure by 4 millimeters of mercury, which is pretty impressive. And so we call that our phase 1 San Diego State study. Our phase 2 study, which coincidentally yesterday I just got the results from. I'm not able to talk about the results because they're publishing a manuscript on this to go in a prestigious medical journal. And so I have a confidential issue right now, but all I can tell you, it was way beyond what I expected. And San Diego State University, their biology department is buzzing today because that was released internally yesterday. So that study is on the ability to reduce both mean arterial pressure and reduce glucose in the blood. And you can imagine what a device that can do that is worth. So I think that will be published in September, from what I understand. And then we also have another study going on right now with Fielding Graduate University in Santa Barbara, California. That started in 2017, and they're just analyzing the data right now. It was 12 families in this study, 12 families with an autistic child. And one of the things that our device does, by infusing heat into the circulatory system, we mimic a low-grade fever. And there's something with autistic children called autism and the fever effect, which was discovered at Bellevue Hospital in 1985. And there was a whole ward of autistic children that developed the virus, got fevers, and it was noticed that they became almost normal. Their speech impediments disappeared, their anger, their anxiety disappeared, and it was amazing. And people attributed, because everyone had a fever and they were all the same. It's called the fever effect. You can Google it and you'll see some amazing articles. The problem was the research was always restricted because it was difficult to get an independent review board to, first of all, it's hard to get human research done anyway, but to infect a child and then ask for the ability to do research on it was another thing that held it back. As far as I know, we're the first person or the first sponsor to get an IRB approval for treating the fever effect. And that's because, again, we're not infecting the child. We're just mimicking the fever that you would get with a low grade temperature. So again, for whatever reason, September looks like we'll be able to publish that data. So those are the two studies that we have left. And we're very happy so far with our arrangement with New Life Ventures. As I said, we started marketing it over the internet in 2016. Most of our sales came from clinical physicians who recommended to their patients, and the patients recommended to other patients, which was word of mouth. So so last year, Danielle, who's been with me from day one on this, actually was her sister that we found she's migraine patient number one, was talking to Jeannie, who you'll hear talk later, and discovered that Jeannie had seen one of our devices at a physician in Beverly Hills a couple of years before, and she was just inquiring on how were sales going. It's, she heard everything about the device and it sounded amazing, and we were just, Daniel said, we were selling organically. Our intention would be to get our device. I mean, that's our mission, to get our device in everybody's hands all over the world. So that's the mission that we have. But we weren't achieving that mission. We were just organically making money. And Jeannie said, I've got some time. I'm in between projects, and I know a bunch of other people that we could get together, and I'd like you to meet some of them. So I went out and I met Bill Resides in December in Chattanooga. We continued to talk, and in January of this year, we signed an agreement to have New Life Ventures actually be formed. So they actually took 4 executives and put together a company that would exclusively market our product globally. And this is something that I was looking for. We had a lot of distributors in the past come up and talk to us, but they all had 3 or 4 products, maybe 50 products. One I think had 300 products. And they actually use our device, but they never could talk me into letting them market it because I was afraid that we wouldn't get the full attention that the device deserved, and I wouldn't be able to accomplish our mission of getting our device in as many families, or it's a family device, by the way, in many families as possible. So what you guys have here is, and I know this from the last 5 years, is you have an unlimited market. And for a whole bunch of reasons, and it's called fields of use. And because we're increasing microcirculation, we're the only device that has been independently verified to increase microcirculation. And with that, being able to increase microcirculation, there are so many different things that the device does, because that's like the least common denominator, if you will, for almost every health problem there is. They say when people are over 40 years old, 80% of those people have a compromised microcirculation system, and it just continues to go down. And if we can reverse that, and we've shown we've been able to reverse that. Spent a week at the University of Amsterdam at their microcirculation company that's partially owned by Philips Electronics, and we actually have videos and showing how we increase microcirculation, how we recruit capillaries, which that's what metformin does, if you're familiar with metformin. So you have just an amazing product. I am so thrilled that you have an amazing product, because every day we get someone calling up or somebody writing, and the stories, because I've heard these stories that seem too good to be true or too amazing for a whole bunch of years, they don't affect me that much anymore, other than they affect me personally. They are amazing, even now. I mean, I got I mentioned I got a letter from actually one of Mita's friends or customers or clients, and this man is 72 years old, a veteran, and before he got our device, his whole movement was from his bed to his wheelchair, from his wheelchair to his bed. And I got an email about 3 weeks ago, just kind of bragging, saying that, you know, how it's changed his life. And he was bragging because for the first time in a year and a half, he was able to drive his car that day, and that was a big deal for him. I still get a little choked up hearing that story. And you're going to find you're going to have the same reaction, because you're doing so much good. And I don't think and I know how much money can be made in that. Jeannie will tell you about that, which I've never really paid attention to. But you know, if it can bring more people in to get our device in more hands, I mean, things that we've seen with 2-year-old children, 4-year-old children, 95-year-old women, it's absolutely amazing. So I congratulate you on making this decision, or if you haven't made this decision by now, what are you waiting for? But anyway, I'll answer some questions for you now. I, in fact, always miss out huge chunks of my presentation because I'm not a public speaker. My wife's the actress, and she memorizes scripts. I can't memorize anything.
Hey, Tom, I always learn something new every time you speak. I've got a few questions that tend to come up. If you don't mind me running through just a few. Are there any contraindications? Well,
I mean, we've done over 5 million treatments with 0 adverse events. We have, you can imagine, people in pain have all types of sicknesses and have all types of problems. We have people on fentanyl patches. We have people on morphine pumps. We have people on triptans. And those are things that you would typically worry about. From, you know, I hate to say no, okay, none that I'm familiar with. Mm-hmm. You know, and we've had so many users that they should appear. I mean, I use all the normal adaptations of the body. Sometimes I like to say a body hack, okay, but that's just because I open the door to the circulatory system by creating a portal to infuse heat in. But other than that, the biggest thing I do is dilate the capillaries, and I elicit capillary function, which is just amazing what it does for those cells in your body that need nutrition and oxygen and need toxins removed or excess interstitial fluid. So it's very safe. It's a very safe device.
Okay. So why did, you know, this is another common thing that comes up. People look at the device and they go, hey, do you have one for the feet? And we've talked about this, but what is your position? Why did you choose the hand? And why would you not choose the feet?
Okay, so the reason that they mention the feet is because is because, and that's another whole story, by the way, I'd like to tell you someday when I can. But the feet and the hands have a unique vascular system that's called arterial venous anastomosis, and they're your body's radiators. And so if your body needs to dump a lot of heat, it will take an area that has already a lot of blood and redirect the cardiac output to fill it with blood to radiate off the heat. So that's why the foot is a good place to use, and so is the hand. For a whole bunch of, and think about this, think about if you're in bed at night and you feel warm, the cover's a little warm, what you do is you stick your foot out just naturally. And the reason you stick your foot out is because your foot is filled at that point with a lot of blood. And so you're probably in a 70-degree room and you've got 99-degree blood in the bottom of your foot. And the second law of thermodynamics says heat goes to cold, okay? So that heat goes out of your body to the colder ambient air in the room. So it's a great place to do what I do. The problem with it is number one, calluses, blisters, things that people normally have on their feet, impedes the transfer of heat. Okay, it adds another barrier. And the most important part is one of the mechanisms, or our mechanism of action. When I say I use the body's natural adaptations, I include the human heart in our mechanism of action. So when I heat the blood in the palm of your hand, it goes to the heart, and the heart distributes it throughout the whole body. And you can see how closer the heart is actually to the when you use the palm of the hand than it's in the foot. So that's also a good reason. And the third reason is that as people get older, the vascular system in the legs are the first to go. You'll see neuropathies, you'll see all types of vascular diseases that show up in the legs. And so, you know, why create another problem when you don't have to? Secondly, using the hand, anything you have in your feet, we treat. Okay, so from the top of your head to the bottom of your big toe, or to your big toe, we're able to offer a systemic treatment of the body. So things like plantar fasciitis, diabetic ulcers in the heel or in the foot. I mean, we affect all of those, and so there's no reason really to use the feet. Although I get asked that. That's the second thing that people normally ask, what they can stick into things. So I just you can imagine the first. Anyway,
can you talk about what happens if somebody is taking a good supplement in conjunction, or eating good nutrition in conjunction with using the Avacen?
Yeah. Well, because we're increasing microcirculation, and when you increase microcirculation, you increase the bioavailability of whatever's in your blood at that point in time. So if you're taking a supplement and you have it in your blood and you're using the Avacen machine, instead of waiting for it to get peed out, we'll actually drive it into the cells where normally it wouldn't get there. We see the same thing with hyperbaric oxygen treatments, where those businesses use our device right after somebody gets out of the hyperbaric oxygen treatment, because they can fill the blood with 5 times the oxygen, but they don't do a really good job of delivering it to the cell level. That's because of the molecule size. And so we do a really good job. And the same thing happens with that. I always tell the story that about twice a year I'll screw up my back, and about 2 o'clock in the morning it'll be very painful, and I know what I should do. And so I just go and I take an Excedrin, and I wait 10 minutes, and then I use the machine. And about 7 minutes in the machine, I get this euphoric feeling through my whole back, and everything disappears, and I go back to sleep like it never happened. And that's just called bioavailability. It's putting the right things where they belong, and we push them all the way down to the cell level. I mean, I've seen, when I was in Amsterdam, I saw us deliver 4 mic blood cells, red blood cells, to the cells, and that's right. Usually you can't get. Usually they're usually 10 mics, which is the size of a normal capillary, is where everything stops.
Wow. Okay. Well, great. Appreciate that. So is it fair to say then, if you're taking a supplement, it's going to work better than perhaps it ever has when you're using it in conjunction with Avacen?
I've had 2 or 3 people, that, including manufacturers of supplements, that figured that out and say yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you. And what is your strategy as far as studies going forward? What's the philosophy or strategy, assuming that you're going to do some additional studies?
Yeah, well, my whole world changed yesterday, okay? And I'm getting a budget for something that was discovered yesterday. And I'm setting everything aside because it's so big. And so all the strategies I did have been put on hold, and I'll be able to talk about, hopefully within the next couple of weeks. The problem is, to get something published, you have to attest to the fact that the information isn't in the public domain, so the scientific journal can take pride in putting out new information, and that's how they get the readership.
Okay. All right. Well, that's exciting. I can't wait to hear what you're into there. So, I'll be checking the calendar in 2 weeks.
Okay.
Well, look, Tom, as always, so much appreciate your time. I think that this has been very, very meaningful for people to hear directly from yourself. And there's probably several other questions that we haven't addressed here. But again, thank you so, so much.
You're
and
welcome.
take care. Bye-bye.
Bye, guys.